Hello and welcome back to my studio. It's Lois here from Lois and Morgana Davidson Art, and today I'm going to be sharing this video with you and talking about something that happens to us all, whether we're beginners, intermediates or very experienced artists. We all get those times when we don't know what to paint. We even sort of doubt whether or not we can even remember how to paint. Some people call this painter's block or a creative block, and I'm going to share this video today and showing you how I get through those times when I feel frustrated and out of practice. I suppose it's a little bit like if somebody's learning to play a musical instrument. If they don't practice every day, then they can get a bit rusty and they need to sort of put in the extra work in order to get back to where they were before they took their break. I think it's a bit like that with painting. And so one thing that I do is I take the pressure off myself and I just decide to play with paint. And my favourite way of doing that is to paint semi-abstract landscapes. This means that you can take the pressure off yourself and just play around with the paint, see what happens and get back into the groove, if you see what I mean, as to how to get the water and the paint and gravity to flow together. So I'm going to be using the wet in wet technique, and I'm going to be using a plastic store card to apply my paint to the wet paper to produce this lovely abstract full moon and mountain scene. So the way that I do this is, as I say, taking the pressure off myself, not even using a brush. I take an old plastic flexible store card and squeeze out some fresh paint onto the edge. And today I've chosen cerulean blue, Payne's grey, indigo, sepia, and I've chosen some burnt sienna. I'm using the back of an old painting for this warm-up, so it's a nice economical way of warming up and practicing. It's Saunders Waterford hot press paper, a nice smooth surface, and I've wet it all over the sky area and I've left a few dry patches in the land. Now here's my store card, and you can see how I'm applying the paint, which I've squeezed out heavily onto the card across an imaginary horizon line. As I say, this is a landscape, an abstract landscape I'm trying to produce, so I shall be trying hard to get something that kind of looks a bit like some sort of landscape. And however it ends up looking, I will develop those marks without any pressure. If it all goes wrong, it doesn't matter, but if I can, I'll see if I can turn it into something. Sweeping the card along in shallow diagonals, allowing the paint to sort of flow down the page. My board's at an angle of 45 degrees, which is the way I normally paint, and that means that gravity is helping the paint to sort of flow across the wetter parts of the page and to resist the drier parts. And then with a wash brush across the wet sky with some cerulean blue, it's got a little bit of indigo in it. I've taken that from what's left on the card, and I'm just going to wash that gently across the sky to give myself some very pale blue, misty sort of a wash across the sky. And then I'm taking a large 3-inch Daler Rowney Aquafine Skyflow brush and using the tips of the brush dipped into the card, the paint that's left on the card. And I'm going to try and build up the look of some mountains, because that's what it's starting to look to me. And I will work with whatever I end up that this abstract spontaneous method of painting gives me. If it had given me some trees, I would have turned the marks into trees, but I'm pretty sure that these will make really lovely mountains. All the detail is going to be that darker patch of mountains there. I can already see a little pale mark appearing just sort of randomly about a third of the way in, and I think I'm going to use a simple technique to turn that into a moon. But in the meantime, first I'm just going to establish this really nice mountainous shapes using the store card, a smaller cut up piece, to run through the thick damp paint to spread it around a bit, also to etch through it in places, and then back to the brush. And I hope you can see that I'm beginning to build up these sort of mountain ranges, or at least suggested marks that give me the abstract sort of suggestion of these mountains. There are no rules with this sort of experiment. Remember, it's a warm-up. It's something to try and kind of get you relaxed and loosened up, especially if you're feeling a bit of painter's block, just to learn to play with the paint again and see what happens. And I've ended up covering over the little pale mark that I was going to turn into a moon, but by happy coincidence I have created another pale mark, which I think you can see just a little bit further into the page than the previous one was. So I've still got the opportunity to turn that mark into a moon. But first I'm going to tilt my page around because I can see some quite wet bits. And so I can allow those wet areas to sort of run across the wet channels of the paper, and that just helps to give me the lay of the land suggested a little bit more. And then as soon as I like the look of that, I can turn my board the right way around again, but I'm going to lay it flat this time, and that means the washes won't move around anymore. Now the board's flat, I'm going to take one of my fine liners. It's got a round end. I'm wrapping tissue over the round end to give myself a circle of absorbent paper tissue. I'm touching the round tissue, the end of the pen that's coated in the tissue, onto the damp paint, and can you see it's lifted the paint out and given me that lovely circular moon. So I'm really pleased with that. The light's not that great because the light is bouncing off the flat page. I can go in now with a small calligraphy brush and just tidy up around the bottom of the moon where the paper was a bit ragged near the bottom, but now I've got a really nice circle. And I can just use my flat brush to introduce a little bit more blue coming further forward. Cerulean blue mixed with a little bit of the indigo just gives me a slightly paler variation to the marks that I've made for the mountains. Being careful not to disturb anywhere around the moon because I think it looks really pretty there. And the moon has now become my focal point, so I'm going to warm up a little bit of the mountainous area with some burnt sienna. Not much, just enough, so that little bit of warmth will now help to draw the eye across the snowy landscape towards the distant mountains and the moon just sinking below the mountains. Remember, if you're doing something like this, the trick is to have fun and just experiment and play with any kind of opportunities that you see. In other words, watch out for what the paint and the water and gravity are doing together, and if you see like the potential for a tree or a boat or a mountain or a house or anything like that, then go for it, because that's what this is all about. And even if you don't like all of your painting, or if you ruin it, you still will have had a lot of fun experimenting. And if you kind of keep an eye on things as they're progressing, you probably will be aware of the point at which it all went wrong. So the good thing is then to grab another old painting or the back of an old painting, a sketchbook, and go in straight away and have another go and see what you can do. See if you can sort of learn from what happened in the previous painting. And that's what I do. I sometimes will just go and paint sort of 4 or 5 paintings in a row, not worrying about the outcome, just splashing the paint around and getting familiar with it again, learning how to play, taking the pressure off myself, because after all, I'm not trying to produce a finished painting with this. I'm trying to kind of get back into it again, to get through the painter's block. And the ideal way to achieve that is by, as I said, getting that pressure off so that you know that it doesn't matter. You don't have to create a masterpiece. All you're trying to do is play with paint and just remember why you love watercolour so much. So next time you feel frustrated and you can't think what to paint, or you feel like you've got creative block, then why not try something similar to this? Just grab your favourite colours. And don't try to produce a finished painting, just splash around, have fun, remind yourself of the amazing things that watercolour can do when you take the pressure off yourself and just have fun and experiment. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave us a like if you found this helpful, and if you're not already subscribed to our channel, then why not consider doing so. It's free to do and it really helps with our reach. And thank you so much to everybody that supports us on Patreon. We really do appreciate you. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.